listening to Unfiltered Connections, the podcast bridging industries, crossing perspectives, and creating partnerships. I'm your host, Mario Chessa. Welcome back to Unfiltered Connections. Today's conversation is a special one because we're diving into what it really means to connect industries, geographies, and people in a globalized world. My guest today is someone who operates exactly at that intersection. Gonçalo Terenas is a global strategist with more than 20 years of experience working across industries and business intelligence, corporate strategy, and economic diplomacy. He has advised multinational boards, built international networks across continents, and is deeply involved in shaping how markets connect globally. He's also head of corporate and international business at Tuga Innovation and leads initiatives like Diaspora Prime and the Africa GCC Council, both focused on building bridges between regions, industries, and opportunities. But beyond all of that, what I find most interesting is his role as a connector, someone who brings people, ideas, and capital together across borders. Gonçalo, welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Hello, Mario. The pleasure is mine. It's always fun to be with you.
Right.
And I hope we can have a good chat and pass the message that you want me to pass.
Well, that's up to you. I'm not going to influence you.
Well, you just kidnapped me to the call to this.
Right. Well, maybe we should start where we met. Right. I mean, we met at the conference called the QSP Summit in Porto last
Correct.
year, and you had your own section basically of that conference, which was Diaspora Prime, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But it's funny how we met as well, because I think it sets the tone for what this podcast is all about, which is, connecting people, connecting geographies. It was a common friend, Linda Pereira, who put us in touch. And I had just been talking to her about my idea of launching a podcast. And the first thing she said, you should talk to Gonçalo Terenas. He should be on your podcast. And now fast forwarding 4 months, basically, here we are talking about the podcast. Now, Gonçalo, tell us a little bit more about Diaspora Prime and that initiative, because that's how ultimately we connected for the first time.
Yeah, true. Yes, Linda Pereira, let me just give homage to someone that I consider very much. She have this perfume to choose people to connect.
Right.
And definitely it was a momentum to meet you. And I'm very pleased. In my daily basis, I used to play that I'm always hunting opportunities, hunting people, and that's how we have met together. Coming back to the Diaspora Prime and QSP Summit, so it's a business intelligence consortium, if you want. It's above a think tank or something that you can define. So basically, is to bring together people, crafting coalitions, and I'm in diaspora since more than 2 decades, living abroad, having interesting experience with multicultural environments. And this is a project that was born almost organic. Mm-hmm. I was invited for someone to think about creating a structure around diaspora. I've been in
specifically Portuguese diaspora.
Well, yes, but nowadays, and maybe because I've lived in abroad many years, I don't see diaspora as with having a nationality. Mm-hmm. So diaspora is people around the world with experience different culture, working with different environments. Business are not equals in different geographies. But yes, of course, I've been in Conselho da Diaspora during a couple of years. And for me, it was an interesting experience to see that born. And when I came back from Africa, where I've lived more than 1 decade, I promised my family that I will come at the age of 50. I didn't make it at the age of 50 anyway, but it was not that
to come
far.
back, you mean? To
yes,
Portugal?
yes. But the problem is now, and as a side joke, once you get in Africa, that's what I've lived. You can get out of Africa, but Africa doesn't get out of you.
Right.
Definitely. So, came back from Africa. I've established by invitation of a media partner to create something around diaspora and create momentums around it. But suddenly we have started to build a brand, which is a trade brand, by the way, trademark. And the objective was to bring together mindsets and mind states around one subject. And you have mentioned about if it is Portuguese diaspora. Yes and no, because if we look at Portugal nowadays, this is a melting pot of different nationalities. You are a good example.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for us, it's much more interesting to gathering these different nationalities living in Portugal and listen to them. And as a consortium, what we try is to leverage more human capital. Of course, we have a structure organized where you want to create dialogues. You have been in one of our our talks. We want to promote bridges, to build bridges. And once per year, we attend a special session. The last 2 years was in QSP Summit. For me, probably one of the most interesting strategic marketing and strategic communication summits in Europe. And once per year, we gathering all our ecosystem to promote business, to create bridges, to invite foreign diasporas in Portugal to get along with us and see at the end of the day, it's not all about business; it's all about people.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we try to connect people, and here we are.
There you go.
We are a good example of that. Trying to ignite businesses because it's important, and to establish sustainable coalitions and collaborations, and that is business as usual.
Right.
So bottom of line, what we want is to create a platform where people have the sense of belonging, non-political. For us, this is very important. We know that we need to use politics here and there.
Sure, but it's not colored whatsoever in the sense of politics. Yeah.
It isn't, and doesn't have borders, by the way, also. Right. So, but it is a living body with a common objective of bringing people together. And when you bring human capital of quality, business happens anyway. It's a question of time.
It happens organically, right? That brings me to another interesting aspect of your life. You just mentioned it. You've lived in Africa for about a decade.
More than a decade.
Africa never leaves you. You and me are today involved in something that you invited me to be part of, and I'm grateful for that because I'm very excited to be part of that, which is the Africa GCC Council. 2 questions. When it comes to your living in Africa, right, and your initiatives today, is that directly correlated? I mean, is that because there's a passion about Africa? And, at the same time, I would say answer question number 2, which is why setting up and what is the Africa GCC Council?
Well, in an easy word, for me, it was common sense. If you look at the geopolitical environment nowadays, the planet is a mess. You look at the United States and all the difficulties and complexity that we live there. Europe, as I used to say, it's the old lady. We create rules to regulate regulatory systems, so it's very bureaucratic. You have, the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, which is also something very dramatic and doesn't let us to look at the big picture in terms of business environment. So if you realize you have 2 regions in the world nowadays where it is, at least for now, it's a safe port, Africa and Southeast Asia. And what you find in between it's one of the most dynamic regions, or at least pinpoints, that it is UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, but specifically, and where we are focused, it's in the UAE. And UAE, it's a hub of logistics, of culture, of financial square, that it's in between Southeast Asia and Africa. So we have decided with the same mindset that brought us together. I met someone in Angola where we had some interest there, and we find out that me and my co-founder were speakers in the same conference in Abu Dhabi last year, and
Called the AIM conference, right?
yes, correct. AIM Congress. It's held by the AIM Global Foundation. It's a arm of the government, so it's a public institution, but with a focus on selling the destination. So FDI, it's the key approach of these kind of conferences and summits.
So AIM's main objective, pardon for interrupting, is really making that link between the GCC countries, their financial capabilities from an investment point of view, and the rest of the world. Is that a correct summarization of what the conference is about?
It is, however, from our lens, we have looked at it as a strategic point to ignite, enlighten, and elevate the African continent.
Okay.
Also because we know that the capital investors from that region of the Gulf are eager to find more and to invest in the African continent, where you have the richest continent in the planet.
And that's what gave birth ultimately to what is
Correct.
called the Africa GCC.
Correct. We just connect the dots. We don't invent the wheel. We just, and this is one of the things that I used to do. I read the room. I understand the context. I really try to be comprehensive and see where is the opportunity. And definitely with the experience we have in Africa, with the experience we have in the Gulf economic region, and strategic partners, because again, at the end of the day, it's all about people. We know the right people on the right spot. So we try to bring them around the table and explain what we want to do. And it was, to be honest, it was unexpected, because it grows with an organic approach that we didn't saw it come. But now it's a reality. It's become a milestone. So it's bigger than us. So what we are building is something with heritage, with legacy. And it's not about us. It's about the outcome. Reason why you are here with us. The reason why we have invited you. We are challenging you to come on board. So the vessel is on the high sea. So we know our track. We know where we want to go. And if we, on the ongoing process, if we find people like you, we just make a quick stop on the pier, come on board,
incorporate,
bring value, incorporate, and let's go.
So just for the listeners, obviously the AIM conference was meant to take place in April between 13 and 15. Obviously, given the geopolitical circumstance of what's going on in the Middle East now, that has been postponed to September.
Correct.
But on the other hand, every negative can be turned into an opportunity, right? So we have more time to bring people on board. But I would like to dig into a little bit the subjects and the topics that are being addressed at the African Pavilion within the context of the Africa GCC platform. And then we'll talk a little bit about the side activities that we have in mind and the long-term process, because it's not just about the presence at the conference, right? It's about instigating a lot of initiatives that go beyond just the timing of that conference. Now, you invited me to curate hospitality, tourism, sports, and arts. I think it's fascinating because the potential of Africa from a tourism point of view and from a hospitality point of view is massive, right? I mean, there's a bit of a cliche when you talk about the African continent, which is the safari cliche. There's nothing wrong with safaris at the very contrary, but you'll confirm there's way more than a safari to tourism development into Africa. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Because, you've lived Africa, you've lived in more than one African countries. Where do you see tremendous potential for hospitality and tourism? And how do you see it also as a vehicle for other sectors, for other industries to develop in Africa?
Well, let me pick the beginning of your question. Yes, we are facing a complex moment. So what? One thing that I learned living in Africa, and I always make fun of some of my fellow Portuguese. When they heard the word problem, they scratched their head. When I heard the word problem, because at the end of the day, it's my experience. When you are in front of a problem living in Africa, at the end of the day, the outcome, it's better rather than if you didn't have the problem. So when I see a problem coming, I say, wow, what an opportunity. And this is our way of incorporating all these momentum that we are living. Yes, it's complex, it's tragic, but you know what? At the end, I'm a strong believer that we will come out of this stronger, and the opportunity will be even more interesting, more sexy than that we had before. So yes, we need to fine tune a little bit. It's mandatory.
Sure.
We need to wait for this to finish. But my personal feeling is that if before the Gulf was eager to invest in Africa and to attract business opportunities, after the conflict will be even more interesting.
Right.
So let's face it as we describe, and this is the way we approach the reality. So it's not an issue. We just need to refine and fine tune things. And one of the things that I always address when I'm invited to speak in conferences, my first two words in my dictionary doesn't start by A. So the first is context, and the second is be able to relativize and be adaptive. So if you want to have businesses or be successful in Africa, you need to read the room. You need to understand the culture. We can never impose our metrics. It's a big mistake. And I've saw it so many times. I've led more than 100 missions in Africa from Portugal and other countries. And when I saw our fellowships trying to impose their own metrics, they could never, ever succeed.
Right.
So one thing that I've learned is we need to understand the context, move with the flow, be very, very aware of cultural issues, and try to adapt to those local cultures, because it's the only way to be accepted. Until you are not accepted, you don't play any game. You have a clue, you have an idea, but it's only fog. You are not in the game. So from the moment that you introduce yourself in the local culture, and that's why I'm a big lover of art, as you know, and culture, I have always advocated for be on their skin, participate on cultural activities, and to embody all this reality, local reality. So from there, it's much easier to be considering as part of it. And this leads me, if you allow me, to the sense of belonging. And the sense of belonging is probably a key factor to be considered part of the game, part of the big picture. So you play your own role if you understand how important it is to feel that you belong, and the others want to belong where you stay and for what you stand. And this, now coming back to the question of...
So, sorry to interrupt you again, but when you say the sense of belonging, you're referring to the fact that when you created Africa GCC Council, the whole idea was exactly that, is to bridge it in the sense of belonging from whoever might be interested to invest into Africa as much as the Africans themselves that have an interest into developing whatever development opportunities there might be in a specific country, right? I mean, to be really a vehicle, a facilitator between
Pretty much,
between trait d'union, they would say in French, between the players from the receiving and from the other end, so to say.
You know, bringing people together is not creating a group or a common body. If you don't establish a common ground where people want to belong and they see themselves being part of that endeavor, they can come, they can listen, they can clap, but then they
go away.
Go away.
They leave.
And this is one of the mottos of this Africa GCC Council. First, shared leadership. We need to bring people like you. You know better about your sector of hospitality and tourism. So we don't want to inventing the wheel. We want to have human capital in different topics that we know they deliver. And this leads to the other motto, walk the talk. Those like you and me that are used to attend many conferences and fairs and summits, we heard people speaking, the finest speakers, the most prominent keynotes, but at the end, okay? So we want to definitely get out of that approach, and that's why we walk the talk. And in our project, in our concept, each topic, each conference, at the end, we need to issue a manifesto. So we want people to commit. Of course, we need to follow the streaming of this kind of initiatives and events, but we want to go beyond. And to go beyond, you have only one possibility. People need to feel that they belong. People need to understand that they can add value, and we give space them to bring their own value.
Right.
And at the end, you are crafting in a very pragmatic way. You are crafting not only coalitions, but the day after. Because if you don't deliver, and this is something that we want to introduce and to incorporate in our mind state, we need, at the end of this Africa GCC Council as a Congress, we want to have deliverables.
Right.
So people that can understand, okay, let's join them, let's follow them.
The key word is basically, it's only a success if there's follow-up to what happens there, right?
Because if you don't have day after.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, back to hospitality and tourism. And, one of the main reasons I think that we got to the point where we decided to work together, specifically in terms of me curating hospitality and tourism for the Africa GCC, is that I remember telling you, I see hospitality and tourism as a massive platform for other industries, right? And I think the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, you heard that sort of resonated with you, and you said, well, that's exactly the case in a place like Africa as well. Elaborate a little bit on that part as well, because there's a number of topics, right? There's two more that I'm co-curating, which is sports and arts. It's all very much interconnected, but I'd like to hear from you. I mean, where do you see, being a connoisseur of Africa, the biggest opportunities to connect hospitality and industry with what type of industries?
Well, for the record, if this goes better or worse, you are the one who's the responsible.
I'm in charge. I got it.
Because indeed, when I heard you bringing the subject of hospitality and tourism, personally, I immediately saw a cross-border area and one of the most synergetic sectors, because and that's not related necessarily to Africa or GCC.
No, generally speaking.
So, of course, in Africa there's a huge ground, a huge path to walk through in terms of tourism. And yes, in this specific case, Africa is a very interesting destination. Why? Because there's many things to be done, from training, from food security, from energy, from logistics, of course, real estate. So when you address us this challenge, I immediately embrace it because it could connect, and once again we came to the connecting dots, could connect several sectors and could be a hook to different stakeholders, investors, or just promote the dialogue. How deep is important to have this topic. So and you have mentioned sports and art, so hotels and resorts and destinations. You can deep dive in different sectors. So you need to have home decor in a hotel. You need to establish food security. So you can branch different sectors, and in Africa even more, of water resilience, of bioagriculture, creating jobs, training people. So the synergy that hospitality brings on this field is definitely an ignition to attract several sectors. So yes, from your challenge, we embrace it and we want to explore. And one of the outcomes in the first mile that we understood is that there are many sectors and companies and corporate bodies that have manifested to us hospitality and tourism is something that we want to be part of. So let us know how. So definitely yes.
And that's something that I have to say attracted me tremendously to the project as well. Because if I look back at our initial conversations and the topics that were or that will be addressed during the conference, I immediately saw the opportunity to have people from other sessions being present on the hospitality and tourism session. You just mentioned a few, but when you talk about water management, sustainability, digital transformation, I mean, there is no better platform in that respect than hospitality
Absolutely.
and tourism. And I think it's quite amazing when you hear, and you just confirmed it, people demonstrating interest to be part of a session that is not belonging to their core business simply because they see the opportunity, right?
I go further. Some of them almost seems that they want to apply to be part of our session.
Right.
So
right.
yes, definitely that's a hook.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other interesting thing is that connection, obviously the direct connection, GCC Africa, is that the Middle East, and more specifically the United Arab Emirates. I remember going to Dubai for the first time, I think it was 2001 or 2002, and there was one hotel on Jumeirah Beach, one or possibly two hotels. And today there's probably no square footage anymore available to build hotels.
True.
And benchmarking something that has become a very successful reality from a tourism point of view, that itself could be very useful to convince people to invest from the GCC into Africa. Don't you think so?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the amount of developers and investors on real estate that you can find in let's speak Dubai is so huge, and the cross-cultural environment is so diverse that, as you said, is still growing, but capital diversification definitely is looking to Africa as one interesting investment destination. And in some point, the experience that Dubai brings can be replicated in different destinations in Africa. And we believe that Africa is no longer the tourism of savannah or the tourism of
Exactly.
safaris. It goes beyond that. So we are being approached by wellness, by a quite wide range of tourism applications, and Africa is a playground for those who want to invest, and sustainability is a key word. Environment climate change, all those topics can be articulated when it comes to invest in tourism
Right.
in Africa. And then you need to join logistics. In Africa, we don't measure the distance by miles or kilometers. We measure by time.
Right.
And this leads to another sector, for instance, that we have been approached. It's airspace and aviation. So again, tourism and
It triggers many things. Yeah. Yeah.
but at the end of the day, what it attracts, it's the capacity to bring more people for that destination, to attract more activities to that destination, and then ultimately it allows the country to be to develop itself economically, culturally, financing, academia, you name it. So it is an axle to be explored. And yes, we can profit experience lived in Dubai. And in Dubai, you can find multiple cultures. Probably it is the kindergarten of investment in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have to, or if you want to shift part of that investment and creativity on real estate to Africa, it is a safe port for the investors.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because at the end of the day, we can look at our home turf, which is Portugal, where we live. Ultimately, what made real estate literally explode in a positive sense of the word is tourism. If it were not for tourism, there wouldn't have been the real estate development and the people attracted to the country. So the same goes now, and this was the other discussion we had, hence why we decided to combine the topics in terms of curation, sports and arts. And I'll get to arts in a second, because I know you're a very strong, very big art lover. But when it comes to sport, we have another opportunity. The World Cup is being hosted by 3 countries, not the one upcoming in the United States, but I'm referring to the one with Morocco, Portugal, and Spain, correct? Again, there, sports is a platform for hospitality. Hospitality is a platform for further development. So we saw a lot of interest because of that, and as a result of some countries obviously having qualified for the World Cup to be present at the Africa GCC, at the African Pavilion within the AIM conference, because they see the huge benefit of tapping into sports and hospitality as a gateway to more investment in the country, attract more investment into the country. Are there particular countries within Africa that you see as very or more keen to develop the aspect of hospitality and tourism, just because of their natural environment, also just simply because they see a massive opportunity in developing that sector?
Well,
I know you need to be politically correct because you represent the entire continent, but if you were to pick a few examples where there's a strong push to develop that area, which ones would you take?
Well, let me come a little bit back and pick art and sports. So art is probably the strongest footprint of humankind. If you go back centuries to the contemporary days, art were always something that bring nations together and cross borders, and again at the sense of belonging. Each tribe have different kind of art craft, and if you join that, sport is the most democratic instrument between nations.
Right.
So you can have countries fighting, but when it comes to a football match, everybody will be at the same stadium, and following and defending their own team, and so yes, sports and art are very important in our structure. Without being politically diplomat, Africa is so rich. And I don't see Africa as a whole continent. And one said that you speak about Africa, but you are not African. Yes. So what? I've lived there. I've crossed many countries. I've crossed Africa by road, not only by skies, as the majority of businessmen. I've made it behind the steering wheel. So and I had the opportunity to have a quick lunch in a pirogue on the ocean, but I also have lunches in presidential palaces. So I allow myself to say that I understand the way of reasoning of the particularity of the continent, and the one that knows Africa understand that you cannot address Africa as one, at least four Africas. Maghreb, sub-Saharan Africa, the corner of Africa, and southeast and south of Africa. They have something in common, but they are not equal. So you need to differentiate. And one thing that I've learned working with African leaders is that approach, it's probably the key factor to be successful or to fail. Because in this specific environment, they never forget what you said at first. You will forget because you travel around, but they never forget what you have said at the first seconds of conversation. So you need to understand the destination to adapt or to forecast investment. Of course, you have some tycoons in Africa, Nigeria. And I'm speaking about Nigeria because it will be probably one of the most important and relevant countries at the Africa Pavilion in AIM Congress. Mm-hmm. And Morocco, it's probably one of the most occidental mindsets in terms of business and standards. Egypt, it's another tycoon, but you have Kenya, you have South Africa. These destinations are the strongest in terms of economies in Africa. Doesn't mean that it is the best place to establish an investment in tourism. You have some gems that are not.
It could be very small, actually.
And in our opinion, sometimes less is more. And there are some gems in Africa still to be discovered.
We can't disclose everything now during the podcast.
We cannot.
We would wish, but you can give a snapshot of a couple of the ones that we think.
You have Namibia. You have Madagascar, which is a very interesting destination, and many others.
Right.
But the point is. And coming back to hospitality and tourism, you cannot identify a specific or a common or a broader topic to attract investment, because in terms of culture, in terms of nature, is so diversified.
Exactly. And that's where the opportunity lies, right?
Precisely.
You talk about Cabo Verde, you talk about South Africa, you talk about Egypt. You're talking about different geologies, different cultures, different art patrimony.
Totally.
And it's untapping that potential that is so exciting, basically.
But about sports, I'm going to give you one example of what we will perform during the Africa Pavilion. As you said, the World Cup will be also in an African country, Morocco. So one of the things that we're gonna perform during this edition is to bring all the African nations that are participating in the World Cup and promote dialogue between federations. So one of the momentums that we'll perform will be a roundtable where we will invite all the federations, the football federations of Africa, to discuss the future of sports in Africa and try to profit this occasion, because at the end of the day, the Africa GCC Council is a platform where we want people to dialogue, to promote this exchange. and yes, sports. When you speak in African environment about sports, everybody is ready to.
Everybody's gonna lighten up, so to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we just trying to play smart, intelligent, and to identify which are the topics that, in a very easy way, bring people together. So you don't need to defend if you are a tycoon, if you are a poor country, if you have any needs. You bring sports and art, and people will attend. People will be able and available
Right.
to be on the room.
Right. No more obstacles. All barriers will be overcome. Yeah.
You see?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, before wrapping it up, I'd like to ask you some very concise questions. The answer doesn't consist of more than just a couple of words.
Let's see.
Because I think it's been extremely interesting hearing your perspective, not only on Africa, but on what connections are all about. And I think one of the takeaways for me is, and this is when I first met you, was my impression as well. I said, okay, what's your business model? How are we going to monetize this? What are we going to do? And the first thing you said to me, he says, well, first, intuitively, I identify the opportunity. And then organically, the opportunities will arise from it. And that's a little bit how Africa GCC was born, right? I mean, it's a sensation that there's something big that can happen, that is happening, and that a lot of opportunities will automatically be generated as a result of crossing these perspectives and building these bridges between sectors, between countries. And I'm very excited to be part of it. So definitely looking forward to the buildup of September and to whatever happens afterwards, because that's ultimately the goal as well. Couple of very fast questions quick questions before we wrap it up, Gonçalo. Which continent? This is not a tricky one. This is from the heart.
With you, we never know.
Which country represents the biggest opportunity right now?
You mean globally or in the African country?
No. Continent.
Currently the geopolitical environment is so tricky. I think that it's $1 million question. We don't know.
From the gut.
Well, the experience that I had in the last 2 years, definitely this corridor between Africa and Southeast Asia, it is something to be on our radar. I've been speaking in some conferences in Malaysia, in Thailand, and that region of the planet is booming, and sometimes we had the impression that they are not in the planet because they are so focused on their own things and their own development, and it's so hectic, it's so exciting that we have the feeling that they are in their own life. The world is exploding, but they are doing their things.
Right.
I had very interesting experience with magic opportunities in Malaysia, for instance, in Singapore. But let me use the Africa GCC Council to pinpoint what you have just said and allow me. Africa GCC country is not a congress, is not a conference, is not an event. It's a year-round platform that will bring together people and economic environment around the subject. But we have been approached by the four corners of the world. I cannot say that we didn't saw it coming, but the fact is that in 20 days, having more than 7,000 approaches from such different countries like Brazil, Argentina, India, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, China, Macau, some countries of Europe, only to understand what it is, Africa GCC Council, and how they can, no matter why, right. They just want to understand and they want to be on that initiative, have lead us to an understanding.
That curiosity is very encouraging.
It's more than curiosity.
Yeah.
We are fulfilling a gap.
Right.
For us, this is clear. So everybody that understands a little bit of geopolitical knows that Africa is not the continent of tomorrow. It's no longer that. Africa is the continent of today. And those that take the train in a very fast track will have
a competitive edge,
a more positive outcome. So this is what we realize. It's not about us, and this is go beyond the conference itself.
Right.
Meanwhile, I've lost what you have.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You were a little bit more extensive than the 2 words that were allowed, but that's fine.
You know me.
One sector that people are underestimating in your looking back at your
wow, you only have $1 million questions. I see. Well, I think that there's a common one. It's AI and digital transformation.
No, but that people underestimate.
But they are underestimating AI.
Okay.
You know, AI is the new illiteracy. People from our generation, we are not analphabets, but we are not far away.
But now you're underestimating our generation, basically.
No, you know.
I'm just being provocative, obviously.
The question is, you need to be on. Mm-hmm. You cannot see AI as something that, well, experts and new generations will take. No. Because if you don't at least try to have the big picture or have a global understanding of how it works, if you want to do a SWOT analysis about what it is AI, you risk to stay out of the room because you cannot follow the stream. And that's why I say that probably we are underestimating that field. The others, for me, it's common sense. Food security, it's probably one of the most important sectors and topics that everybody hears about, but mostly doesn't have a clue what we are talking about it. And you can say that this is a common word, you know, food security or energy or climate change. Yes, but still, there are some areas, and if you want, I will say airspace and air sovereignty. Definitely, this is a topic that probably not in the next couple of years will be mandatory to be on the agenda, but in the next decade will be one of the most important topics to be addressed. Air sovereignty, airspace.
Interesting. Yeah. A couple of more before we wrap it up. Finally, choose between the following words: data or relationships?
Relationship, definitely.
Diplomacy or speed?
Diplomacy, always.
One country to watch in the next 5 years?
Again, probably it's because you are Italian, always complicating the
Of course,
the
we thrive in chaos, don't we?
So let me be patriot. Portugal.
Okay, good. Like that one. The biggest mistake. Try to be very concise on this because it's a very complicated question. If you would be able to answer this question pure intuitively, but very simple, what's the biggest mistake people make in international expansion?
International expansion?
Right.
The lack of capacity to understand the context, the local context, right, and the local culture.
On that note, I thank you for having taken the time to be on the podcast.
That's it.
Unfiltered Connections.
Come on.
We could talk for the next hour and a half, but I'd rather invite you back, right? Maybe after the AIM conference in September, or who knows, even prior.
We will be the one to invite you.
Right. Oh, there you go. Well, I'd love to be invited, and I know we will be actually having probably a live podcast from the AIM conference in September as well.
We will with an international media partner that will join us and to co-create again. Share with leaderships and co-creation will be in our hard in terms of initiative, and we count on you. So you will be responsible.
I'm all in. So thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
It was an absolute pleasure to have you. And thank you to the listeners. I just want to announce who will be next on the podcast, Unfiltered Connection. It will be Bruno Goffin, a friend, a former executive of General Electric and Procter & Gamble. And we will be talking about several things, one of them being cross-generational mentorship, but I don't want to give it all away, so stay tuned in for the next episode. Gonçalo, thank you very much again.
It was a pleasure. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you. We will. And stay tuned. Thank you.